kinder. Now, with this horror towards trans folks every day by Trump administration and all these state governments going after trans folks, that's an invitation for us to all be kinder. That's an invitation to be fair and to finally be our authentic selves. Who are you deep down? If you weren't worried about what your friends or the state would say about how you are loving out loud, what would you be like? What does your love look like? What do your dreams look like when they're out palpably just dancing across any fire? You just got sung by every water that just walked through. You just got flown by every bird that you got ever sung to by. It's kind of like flying when you turn into surrendering to swimming or music or singing every hair from every lifetime ever. You found all the radio stations are picked up by your long hair. And if they're trying in commercials, we turn off every commercial because we want to know what every announcer's voice really sounds like. We don't want to hear their announcer's voice. We want to hear their heart's voice. And we do get affected by change. I mean, my New Yorker accent, my Queens accent slips out a whole bunch of times. I'm not trying to suppress it, but it's just, I say, what'd you do with your New York accent? No, I'm 67 and I haven't lived there regularly since 18. Although in the summers of when I was 19 and 20, lived in Manhattan working as an elevator operator, so subletting. But then the more you meet folks, the more you're glad to meet folks that have every accent in the world. So your accent is open to the hearts of every being. Suddenly you're not scared to be yourself again and again. You are at your most pissed off when folks aren't allowed to be at home. Folks aren't allowed to be themselves. When I said to be at home, to feel at home, because it's like so many people scared of ICE raids, like Trump's trampling on the Fourth Amendment. So folks are scared to leave their home, to go to work, to visit friends, to go to get food. So people support systems of just bringing food to folks who are scared to go out to work or church or to be with their friends or all the things they would love to do out in the world. It's this curfew, and I hope your family's sitting you down with that and saying look, this is what all these other people are going through, and to want to help out, not just because it could happen to us next, because it just feels right. It feels better. Suddenly, why you have to pound another bunch of alcohol or pound more food to block out that even the second game or the third game on a Sunday or a Thursday or a Monday or whatever you're watching, sport after sport after sport, is just not getting you high anymore, And in the same way, when you stop playing air guitar, getting so baked to favorite music, when you need to pick up the instrument, it's find out what you've been pushing back on your life. And here we are, it's Passover, it's a Good Friday. Just find out what on Easter Sunday and on Passover and Hanukkah and Ramadan, Christmas, any holiday, anywhere. I mean, all I want to do with holidays is picture the compassion of every holiday. Someone's like, no, it's all about this, about us saying poo-poo to somebody. But even what was the one we just had with Purim, with Queen Esther saved the lives, and who was Hamantashen, kind of we're eating the enemy, I think, just because Haman was this really bad guy. We'd put the groggers and make the sounds in Hebrew school to drown him out. But it's interview every metal that's making that grogger sound. It'd rather be doing something flute-like, maybe even an ocarina, because about a week or so ago, just within this last week, Chip Taylor died, and he wrote Wild Thing. You make my heart sing. You make everything wavy. I never really said groovy, even in 5th and 6th grade when it was so popular. And the reason I said it because the solo of the ocarina, those clay pipes, it sound like a very deep flute, and it's the solo in Wild Thing, but it definitely goes. It seems like it's a little out of key, but perfectly out of key. Peace, miracles to everyone, everywhere. As of 4.5 months ago, here we are, 3 days after Trans Day of Visibility. But the United Nations saying that this is before all the displaced peoples having to get to safety in Iran and in Lebanon. But as of 4.5 or whatever months, how many months ago, the United Nations say 122 million displaced people in the world. Refugees. And just it's crazy to be displaced at an average time. You don't get back often. It averages out people that are refugees, you get back over 20 years later, hopefully, prayerfully. And why don't our families, if you want to have more meaningful relationships with your family, be unafraid to bring up all those things, how all people around the world are living and being treated. And that's the real saying grace, just to put out that good energy, that thankful energy of it, knowing that we're all connected. We may not be able to reach you. We can't in person do something about letting humanitarian aid trucks through into Sudan and Gaza, and Cameroon and Burkina Faso and Somalia and Eritrea and Ethiopia, but just to let everybody feel the heart of every other being in every breath right now, to know that everyone is really from each other. Life gets better when we remember that everyone's an individual and would like to be acknowledged and or at least not killed, and at least respected enough to no, you got to tuck in and walk like this and just, but my heart is singing and it can't help going, wah, wah. Maybe I wanted in 4th grade to have hair this long, but it's been growing since my nephew's bris in 2003. So that's almost 23 full years. But this hair is always waving, whether it's alive or dead. That can't help waving the love light of all, whether it's alive or dead. It's about just feeling. There I could say, no matter how long my hair is, very bald up here, so I get to feel the wind more that I would have missed out on. And the wind, just like the last part that Audrey Hepburn played, and she did so much helping for refugees, but the last part she played on Earth was kind of as an angel in this white diaphanous gown, explaining as an angel, I think, to Richard Dreyfuss. He didn't understand, but he was dead. He had died as a firefighter. It's a wonderful movie with Holly Hunter and John Goodman, Steven Spielberg movie called Always. I think it's around 1989. But she didn't want to leave. I think she was living in Switzerland, and she didn't want to, she just loved being in her garden and with her, and with her dogs, I think, and I don't know, other animals maybe. But because she survived in hiding, that's why she was so tiny, because of malnourishment during World War II, hiding from a Nazi, the terrible treatment from the Nazis in occupied territories. And so she went to East Africa and witnessed and came and testified before Congress and got them to open up the purse strings and kick down an extra $60 million, This would have been probably would this been at the beginning of the 90s, maybe? So quit smoking. I think, did she die of lung cancer? Luckily I quit over 25 years ago, and then I went back. I was having ceremony. My dad had died. We were having that around 10 and a half months after he had died. We were having the tombstone, the unveiling of his tombstone. And so I was using some of the different herbs I was trying to use to try and save him from his cancer. So mushrooms and barley grass, wheatgrass, just different wonderful alfalfa, pau d'arco, and just which is from South America. But I just tobacco had been part of. He hadn't been smoking. Luckily, actually he would go out in the garage, and because my mom banned him, and just he kind of was sad that he had to go and smoke out on the little picnic on the card table on one of those little wobbly card tables out in the garage, and just sit there and smoking. So I had some tobacco, and it got me into smoking. But during ceremony, you don't have to, because all these spirits are part of ceremony, all these angel ancestors, and they don't have a lot of, they can't breathe, they can't cough, they don't have lungs or ears to hear the cough with. And so in the same way, this dear friend who I love so much, who's passed away, Harvey Arden, who would be a lot downstairs, one floor below, he wrote for the National Geographic for decades. And Harvey Arden, garden without the G. And he was working for so many years on the Holocaust, on the camps, of ancestors in Poland. maybe say Harvey. Oh, because when Harvey, because I was at my dad's gravesite, reading and chanting, reading from his Harvey's family, Matthew, Noble Redman, Matthew's father, Matthew's family came to Harvey and said, "Oh, can you do the autobiography? Can you do the biography on him?" And so had that at his gravesite, and leaving little paintings and drawings at the gravesite. And you expect, I mean, at that day, back then there were no camera. I mean, thousands of pieces of art I made and given away that I never got to take pictures of, or the big, my favorite thing, like taking the pictures of them but never developing the pictures. Like, you have a choice. You can afford to get 2 more rolls of film, or for that same money you could develop one of the last rolls. And I'd almost always opt for just getting the more rolls of film, just the joy of taking the pictures. And in the same way, like this, I only look back at like 2% of whatever I upload, or it just feels really right to the heart, because a lot of it's just there forever, and you can't I often just upload the stuff without having seen the entirety of it, but it feels right. Because I worry, because I have my friends and family, they've never witnessed it. I've been warning them, telling them for like 15 years, but I have Tourette's, I have OCD, I have Tourette's, and we've never, got spasm and bark and being in the ugliest state of mind. But the spasms and the bark, that's the one thing you absolutely can't control. The ugliness of mind you can relate to and talk to, and you can be at whisper levels with it, because you never want to take anybody down in that negative energy. But since everything's just energy, so if you're feeling super negative, that's just remnants of somebody alive or dead is going through, whoever on any realm or just time zones away, people going through their pain, their frustration, and that, just like weather patterns, they just like the joy of it's in weather patterns, both the horror and all the happiness. It is always circulating around the globe. So we can take it in at any given moment, but someone who we feel safe with comes along, or a bite of a sandwich that we're smelling that we love reminds us of so many wonderful memories before of this food. Or speaking of nibbling, just a kiss with someone you love so much, and or just again with the mouth. It doesn't have to be music through the mouth, but just in singing together with people. And all these things make you so high and happy that you forget whatever super negativity that you'd bought into. Just a second before you started singing, a second before you started hugging, a second before you started laughing. You were just attached to the pain that somebody was trying to unleash. But they were just saying it because they were trying to discharge it, because they were traumatized upon, and the people that gave them the info were traumatized upon. So instead, turn the trauma you just read about, turn it into some songfulness. That's why, if we've been doing a day or a week of activism in a city that I'd never been in, or a neighborhood I'd never been in, and somebody comes along piss off, hippies, stop activisting, and get off my bench. This is where I've been hanging for months or years, and you're just coming and sitting and singing and making up your songs. You go, dude, as soon as you need us to go, we can even start packing up right now. But since you notice you're saying this while there's some of the instruments jamming, go and sing us all your complaints while we're jamming. Then you find out that you're a blues singer, and when we get blessed to meet you years and months from now, turns out you love singing more than anything. Turns out you love singing even more than helping people get into a bad mood. Turns out you love singing even more than being attached to being grumpy, I mean, like Oscar the Grouch, it's just, you understand, he gets a joy out of being grumpy. It's just and if there's a distance, so many things that are funny in a movie or a show or a clip, it's because we're not feeling the pain of it. Although what I was saying with my Tourette's, I can have a total off with their head response to a comedy. Someone just says something snarky, something not compassionate, and I don't realize I'm holding off, I didn't think of. I mean, I just go, and I love being open to folks when I meet them, and even if they say heartbreaking stuff near me, I want to just I find a way to just to love them and say something I believe in, and and still respecting them. There's that balance. You can love folks whether you've known them for a zillion years or you're just meeting them, but you can still rise up and say and sing. And what's cool with now is that just at least there's still so many people just disappearing without people advocating for them. But I'm just thinking how you could get sent, like Putin used to get sent to a gulag for 10, 15 years. It was when he, a little over 4 years ago, when Putin invaded, had Russian troops go through Russia and Belarus to invade Ukraine. He's saying, just like Trump is saying, it's not a war. If you say a war, then you need permission of Congress. So so Putin would be like, oh, it's a military action. You can't call it a war. If you do, you can be up to 11 years imprisoned. Just like today, and even Pam Bondi's replacement, for and Kristi Noem's replacement, just like, Mullins, just like, it's, but when you were saying, oh no, your First Amendment right, no, you can't. If you're out in the street, and we've too often, because we don't want cops, we want to go back to our day. But again, the white privilege, knowing, because it can be in the middle of videoing sometimes, and the cops like, you can just shut that down. But that's different because now it's been so amped up on the ICE horror all over what Trump has unleashed. I was talking about pre-Trump. What Trump's so unleashed is like, it's just, there's something beautiful about saying, I'm going to be a witness. I'm going to help put together a picture, like what's that famous Kurosawa, the different versions of this horror, Ran, R-A-N. And so just to be fair. And now with Zoom, so your camera hopefully would have some Zoom on it. And so even if you need, you're listening to so many grandmothers saying, stay back, because you're going towards a cop could be misread, because we'd have that when they'd arrest us at like protests for, the Republican Convention or IMF World Bank. It's like you're just going towards someone. Well, no, actually, I mean, you're just going to try and witness and getting closer to someone who's being brutal to somebody else. But I was just going to say, it's just, no, because the Republican Convention in 2004, they just hemmed us in. They just put up all these gates and metal gates like they use for crowd control in general, like they had done in, like the first major protest in Manhattan, because I'd be there month after month after month until my back got in tougher shape. I'd go there for like 14 years, almost every month, just to go and make money, rent, and then come back. And just the first, so people were like kind of freaked out after 9/11, and it was the longest stretch of New York that I've ever been without, like, there's been all this protest. And then finally, I think it was the very end of January, maybe January 31st, and there was the World Economic Forum, I think, was having a gathering, a meeting, thousands of dollars a plate at, and we were trying to get, they wouldn't, the metal gates kept us from getting to, it was at the Waldorf Astoria, so we couldn't get there. And what they did to break the protest up, to keep it from having the strength of being 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, 60,000. I don't know how many it was. You never got to, but the more you go to protest, it doesn't even matter what the numbers are. It just always feels better. Suddenly you feel less alone. Suddenly you'd feel so shattered and unempowered. And like suddenly you see that you just meet up with all these other people that are caring about people that aren't them. And it's such a joy for caring about people that are not you. When you're just expanding your sense of family, because the whole world is really family. So they kept bringing out the gates to break us up. But what they didn't realize, because a friend, Wendell, would tease me. He's on a bunch of, plays a wonderful electric guitar on a bunch of, Kissing Phones Together. And he laughs over, because they had like these, like the equivalent of generals of the police department. The police department doesn't have general, but all these ones with the zillions. A commissioner, was it Kelly? I'm trying to remember. And these folks were coming up and I was like announcing about how I could see all you cops. I see the baby in you. You know what I mean? We're just this. There's no. Because, and I guess whatever I was saying, I wasn't saying I see your epidermis like we said in third grade. Or I don't think I was saying I see you naked, or maybe I don't even know. You just trust spirit. I don't know exactly the language I use, but just how beautiful we are before we have to put on all the costume, the uniform. Everybody's that sacred soul. Everybody's that adorable sacred baby, worth defending, worth respecting. And just and that's the point of, how do you say, A-L-O-K, this amazing person who lives in Texas, who's I think the father from Malaysia and their mom from India, and at graduated Stanford. I just was looking up because they're so inspiring. Anybody you know who's like, what's the deal with trans? What are they, why is that, if they're so kind and right, why, like I was just saying, Ohio and this terrible bill, just it's saying, oh, we're just addressing drag shows, which is crazy anyway. But the way they're describing it, like you could have something, the wrong mode of dress on you. It's kind of like these laws that were on the books in the 1800s. You can't be taught, you could be put in jail for chewing this thing or something, and instead, like there, I don't, most the heartbreak, the horror, the legitimizing, doing horrible things to people in the Old Testament. Oh, what was I going to say? But one of the nice things was, oh, I think it was 10% of the fields to widows and orphans, maybe let them glean the leftovers in the fields, because when I spent a week picking tomatoes in Hatfield, it was a guy and his brother-in-law, and I was just the third person. And they kept talking about, they were just raised with so much John Birch, anti-communist, anti-women, anti-lesbian, anti-colors that aren't white. But they had their kindnesses within them. I'm working with them for a week. I'm deciding they weren't saying anything cruel. It was all cruel. So in between the nicenesses, it was cruel, but it was kind of like the way that people are taught to be racist. No, I'm okay with those. It's like why do you want separation so much? Because you're taught like, oh no, our property values will be more because we're so practiced at keeping that skin color out there, and that's why. And you get talked into thinking you're better than someone. Oh, so I was giving them a hard time about all the tomatoes that they were just calling waste, and I'm like, I could go and finally I talked him into, because it was meeting up. It was going to be in August. Every year the Perseid meteor shower, and they were two, like, well, Nash is still alive, but Crosby's dead. But Nash and Crosby were like best friends for so many years, and they were going to play together out in the Berkshires, just like an hour west of here, and drove out with Ruth, and this would have been like maybe, I don't know, 93 or 9, somewhere in 93 and 94. And I must have given her like 10, 20 pounds. I don't know how many tomatoes, but she brought all these tomatoes. Wait, Ruth, did you bring them to, I think it was to Crosby. Was it Crosby and Nash or just to Crosby? And it was tough to getting the guys to like let go of like, oh, I know. Okay. Because they were like, they got pissed, and this is where some of their prejudice, they'd say like, oh, this is Puerto Rican guy that I gave all these free tomatoes to, but then I saw him spending money on scratch tickets, so he felt so grossly offended, if somebody, and it's true, but we're talking about addictions because, I found this out, and it still, I think, holds right now, but I found this out 20, 30 years ago, that the highest percentage, more than any other state in the United States, the people that pay the most money, percentage-wise on lotto tickets is Massachusetts, so it just... Oh, I know. So, but if they would say, I know when they would mention different countries and different places on Earth that they had issue. Oh, I don't like them. I don't like them. Oh, because I think, was it a John Birch thing? Because they were saying how they thought lesbianism is what, or the Beatles started lesbianism. Like they turned a lot more people lesbian. I'm trying to remember what they were saying, But what I said to them was like, in my first, I just started painting on the streets of Manhattan for the living in like December '97, and it was maybe that month or the next month, and I didn't have money for any Broadway shows, but you trade like a piece of art that you made, and you just hand it, and someone would give you their extra ticket. And it was Sir Jackie Mason, and it was like a fifth row seat, and me and my weird, well, no, my hair wasn't like as long as this, but and he's really funny, but he's really, Republican, and what was it? It's and he was saying, I knew because he was saying, are there any Puerto Ricans here? And I think I had heard him say something like that, and maybe and he's not expecting it. So then he's like, oh, we can talk, and he's just like, and he would just save us about any people that weren't, like he didn't really consider really thinking about the real lives of anybody except Jews and Christians, and it's just, you want to, he's the one who voiced the real life Krusty the Clown's brother, because Krusty the Clown is based on his, because my nephew was circumcised by Jackie Mason's brother, who was a Moyle, and their father was a Moyle and their grandfather was a Moyle. So Jackie Mason like chose not to be a rabbi, not to be a Moyle, not to be a comedian instead. And that's what the Krusty episode was on The Simpsons. You know, like they made them meet up in Katz's Deli. You know, and I'm smiling even though I'm freaking out because of the meat and being vegan, thinking of all those meats hanging together. But luckily, I still love meat smells, and like I've said too many times annoyingly to folks, but I believe it in my heart. But the reason why I think I was surprised being vegan that I'd love meat smells so much, but I'm convinced it's because all the love, like all the love that animals have in their life, it shows up like in their smell. Oh, sorry. So Jackie Mason's like saying, you know, so he's like, is there any Puerto Ricans here? And I'm like, and I just start, and I'm not, like I said, Jewish, and my grandparents from Ukraine. Well, like I said, on my mom's mom said that's Belarus. But, and so I'm fifth row in this Broadway thing, and I'm just waving and waving. And because I didn't want to say anything, I think on some level of respect, I didn't want to break rhythm and ruin his day or ruin anybody's day. And I could, maybe he was going to say something wonderful. I could always be wrong, but I just had a feeling. And so I've always thought about that, about like, you know, the 800 or I don't know how many, 1,200, how many people are in a theater. And they had to go with it like, you know, well, what was that about, Harold? You know, did I say it out loud? The part like whenever the boss and his brother would say, oh, yeah, I think I started to. They'd say, you're going. You have a lot of descent. You're from a lot of places, you know. Because I was saying, oh, I'm part Puerto Rican. Oh, I'm part French. You know, whoever they had issues with, I'm like, oh, I'm part that. You know, I wasn't telling him shut up. I wasn't telling him not. I just wanted to think about, you know, and the joy waiting for him. Not like, all right, I guess the lesson we learned from having Jeff pick tomatoes for us this a week, we should never say anything bad about anybody because anybody could be related to anybody. You're like, no, it's just like, because it's energy. At the same time, it says the same energy, words, the energy expended to say something bumming about somebody, you could be using that to say something kind, to feel something kind, to love. That's what you're bringing yourself right now. It's an ocean. It's love light. And without getting wet or too dry, you can hand over that oceanic love light to every being. That's who's from the love of every being. It's you and everyone you've been taught to hate. You're sitting in this boat together. Your name might not be Bankhead, but you are a baby. You're surrounded by water, and you want to show folks the joy of being fair. You want to ask folks if they've ever made music. You want to feel the heart of really scary beings. Come on, feel the heart of really frightening beings. They must have some heart in there, and how they're gonna maybe not pull the trigger unless we're trying to picture the heart that lives within them. That's the good thing about being way physically weaker than I was when I was younger at 67 now. Not for self-preservation, but it just feels better to not want to physically battle with folks. The 2 times ever I got punched, I never punched anybody, but the only time I got punched was the 2 times I was trying to keep other people from being punched by really drunk person. And turns out, you can kind of guess this, but the drunk person was just as happy to hit me as they were, as happy as they were, I guess, or whatever was making them need to hit the other person that I interrupted them from hitting. They're like, all right, I'll just start, they didn't say it, they didn't announce. Who remembers? I'm remembering back to when I was like 13, and first time was at the parking lot of a bar mitzvah, And the second time, somebody was being beat up. I didn't even know the person was being beat up, you know. And the second time was when I was like 20 and just tripping, have to come down from a Zappa show, a Frank Zappa show, and I'd been in hell the first 3/4 of the show, and like it turned into total heaven. And then so I was in such a heaven mood that I'm being hit by this guy that luckily my friend Beth came along and kept me from being further hit by Shorty, you know, who was like the star of the rugby team, who would like beat people up every weekend. And in my tripping state, my friend Phil and I, we were smiling at this woman who was sitting on the step of student housing, like she was sitting like 60 feet away. And Shorty's like, "That's my girl," or whatever, and he starts hitting Phil. And so I'm like interrupting, trying to keep him from hitting Phil. So then he just is back, was happy to start, you know, hitting me. I still have a little bit of an indentation on that tooth right there. And at the time, this is like when I was maybe 19 or 20, I was going to go, and this is just before I dropped out of college. Or maybe I dropped out already and I was going back and living up there for like a semester. I was almost going to have the tooth removed, and glad I never did. You know? So thank you to whatever angels made that possible. Although I always felt bad, like, I always think, because Alan, who we lived together, like, at the time, is this when we were living on State Street next to the cemetery? Because then we lived together again with Arlene and Betty Lou, and Betty Lou's still one of my best friends in the world. And Mike Moss, who I love, he was in the house, and he just wrote to me yesterday, you know, and Lee, I haven't seen Lee in years, and Yui, I haven't seen Yui in years. Wow. Oh, but Alan lived in the house, and what was it? And that was my learning the first song on guitar ever. This was maybe like 79, and it was like when Dylan was going just from acoustic to electric. Oh, Love Minus Zero, No Limit. You know, my love, she speaks like silence, without ideals or violence. She doesn't have to say she's faithful, that she's true like ice, like fire. Right now, grow love right now. Someone's gonna get kinder when you grow love like right now. When you get kinder, someone else gets kinder. When you bring love, someone feels love. When you suddenly stop judging, you get higher. Suddenly you're not feeling way down, you just stop being so judgy. So we'll switch to A flat. Restore USAID. Restore USAID. Restore PEPFAR and all health and human services. Restore Medicaid. Restore Department of Education. Restore humane language to all government websites. Restore Veterans Affairs. Restore National Oceanographic Atmospheric Administration. Restore Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Restore AmeriCorps. Restore national parks. Restore fairness. Turn into fairness for the sake of ever being. It's like thousands of folks dying every day because of Trump's policy of when he cut USAID that has saved over 90 million people, and he just cut it on beginning January 20th of last year. And 600,000 people had died from cutting USAID. 600,000 people died between around January 21st, whenever he started. Maybe it took a few days for it to begin to kick in, a couple of days, and till the end of February. Till the end of October. So you had February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, 9. So 9 1/3 months. So maybe it isn't. So maybe, hopefully, prayerfully, maybe 1 million folks haven't died yet, because 600,000 had died in a little over 9 months. And now since then, there's been November, December, January, February, March. So 5 months. Oh. So maybe 900,000 folks have died now. I don't know. You just hope folks are brainstorming with billionaires who want to, who just want to do something decent, who want to, because you're just going to feel better. Whatever money you've accumulated, it's going to make you feel way better if you want to just do some decent stuff for folks that you'll never meet. They'll never know it was you, but just you'll get to feel better knowing you got humanitarian aid trucks through, and you got health care through, you got food through. So we had 26 million people saved by, I always tell people, I never vote Republican, never, ever, ever, but I'm grateful to George W. Bush for, I'm thankful to, I would thank Trump if he restored, if he totally restored USAID, I'd be so, oh my God, I'd be so thankful, because he's like, I understand, like everybody wants respect, and he's like, nobody will give me credit for anything, it's a rare thing, like my stepsister, we lost to Lou Gehrig's disease in June 15, 2020. And so he did have a signing for the Right to Try movement, the ability to hey, because it could take so many years. There's such an incestuous relationship between the FDA and Big Pharma. And so when you have these rare diseases, these orphan diseases, there's no money, there's no incentive from Big Pharma. Like when I said my stepsister, Phil Gerber, had Lou Gehrig's disease, they're all any one is just too many, but about 5,000 to 6,000 people get ALS a year in the United States, and the exact amount that tends to be who dies. It's 100% fatal right now, but it's not going to continue to be that way. Right now it's the last 9 months of the Act for ALS Act, which was kicking down $100 million per year to help out with, so it's for ALS and other motor neuron degenerative diseases. So, and just right here in the building, Levi, who I love so much, who took a degree in Holocaust genocide studies, and he works as a medical researcher, because his mom is this amazing medical researcher with this wonderful heart. So he got involved in bringing stories of people with rare genetic disorders, just one floor down. It's, if you look up Living in the Light, which is Living in the Light of, it's like from patienttoperson.com, which is from patient to person. You want to have people supporting someone going through, his heartbreaking illnesses, or living in the light of rare diseases. So you'd see these 3-foot pictures of people's faces. A lot of them are kids on the way, and that's how you know how to get to their door downstairs. And but you realize, because of the life expectancy, some of the folks that you're seeing on the wall, they're not alive anymore. But luckily you don't take down the pictures. It just leaves you in wonder. It makes you, just, that's why I wish I mean, there's some. I mean, for all the horror and horror and horror that RFK Jr. has done, this you want to be grateful to some good stuff in terms of there's this terrible relationship with chemicals and just and not honoring food the way food was eaten 100 and 120 years ago. That's why there's almost no boron. You should be having boron to combine with the D3 to make you vitamin D3 to make your bones stronger, and almost nothing has boron in it. Even most of the vitamin supplements don't have boron in it. And the World Health Organization, the WHO, which Trump has withdrawn us from, they'd say I think you could have at least 9 milligrams of that every day, and probably way more, but double check. But it was in food, and again, most people you wouldn't be having the osteoporosis. I just and then you have the good kind of calcium, not the chalk, not the calcium carbonate. And just God, just to be. All right, I gotta go. But if someone's coming across this, and if you didn't know it already, if you ever come, I mean, if I can't meet you in person, if you need to collect some art, I can make some big pieces of art, or even little pieces of art. When somebody's, I'll send them with 2 dozen, 3 dozen pictures that just weigh a few ounces. This 5.5 by 8.5. Like half the size of an 8.5 by 11, and they fit within an iPad, within a tablet, and so you can bring them with you. So if you have a friend going to a country in the world that I'll never get to, or I don't even know how to pronounce, but you want to bring good energy, and when it became the living, before disability, it was the living. So it's like, so it can raise money, for folks, when you travel to a land. But the only caveat is like, it can't be raising money for some meanie charity. It has to be pro everybody, and it can't be for any armaments. When I met these amazing people, Daka Braka, from made them like 3 dozen or so pieces of art, because they were coming, and they had played the Kennedy Center, and I was just listening to them playing at the Kennedy Center for 2 days in a row when I was Levi, who from Patient to Person, from living in a lot of rare diseases. He's the one who turned me on to them, and I'm like, and they were amazing. And luckily I hope they told me their families were doing okay in Ukraine, and just they keep traveling the world. They keep coming back and play the Academy Music, and I saw them again after Holyoke, I saw them at Mill Pond in East Hampton, and beautiful souls, 3 women and 1 guy. And the only part that really freaks me out, because the whole baby, and our loved ones keep us from war, is during one of the parts of the performance, they have the war going on behind them, and the footage on the big screen behind them. So that's what I was saying. So it's like, so whatever, give them to loved ones here. These are just for you to do whatever you want. But if they used to make, if they could help raise money for whatever, just as long as it's not like towards any weaponry thing, Yes, Jeff, we're putting this chip into my drone, but no, that's what's happening. There's a thing of attrition. We spend this like 30 times the amount of money for the bombs that we're sending, that are compared to the drones that are being used. But I didn't understand it with that. Gonna lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside. But ain't gonna study war no more. Just like. It doesn't mean you're not going to study up and you're going to care and you're going to stand up and you're going to resist. But the more you get into the minutiae, and and the strategies of war, and trees you're missing the water singing next to the trees, and the birds are carrying the water songs, back to some of the mountain songs. It was, the first one that echoed it, the mountains, the underground mountains and the overground mountains, they were singing it longer than anybody, or so says every dust, or so says every water, and so says every board. I tried to say bird, and I said bard, and I said bod. It's just like, what body are you living in right now? What does your spirit go? When you are napping, or when you're way dead, where do you love to go? You never stop loving to have adventures and be of help to anyone on any earth, so someone can suddenly feel the love light of all beings forever and right now. But before I go, just remember, this is much more important than anything I'm ever saying or singing. It's like, restore USAID. Look at there's somebody who worked for them, who's a professor, a surgeon at Mass General, Brigham and Women's hospitals in Boston. Atul Gawande, working for USAID, Global Health. ATULGAWANDE. And to find out through the Chand, his work through the Chand School of Public Health at Harvard, And the stats I was saying about the 600,000 folks dying between about January 21st and the end of October, with mostly children, those numbers were from The Lancet magazine, the medical journal from England. So, just peace miracles to everyone everywhere. And I'm just, how dare we? I mean, it kills me because it's like I didn't get to go because I'm just still battling this diverticulitis. So I didn't go to any of the Passover Seders, but it just, you want everyone to root for everyone else. There's a joy. It's so weird. That's what every ancestor of every religion, now that they're dead, they're like, oh yeah, we're not attached to that anymore. No, we're not tribal. We all get along. Kind of like, and you don't mess with the Zohan. He was killing all these people working for the Israelis, Adam Sandler, and all he wanted to do was to live and breathe and fall in love and be a hairdresser. That was the gateway. He knew instead of shooting people, he wanted to just be a hairdresser. So if you think you're on a path where you have to kill people or you have to do what everybody else says, just picture the joy you're going to have and how much your family will be happier, you'll be happier. And when you meet up Thanksgiving or Easter dinner or Passover dinner with your family, they'll be like, oh, that guy, that her, that they, that he, that whoever we always meet at the Thanksgiving dinner, they're always the happiest at the table because they're just living their self-actualized life. They're living their authentic life. They're just being themselves. And then if that's what you take, instead of, oh, they're the weirdo, lucky I only have to see them once a year. So that's kind of how people start with trans folks, just like, oh, over there, you're too weird for me. Be like, no, because you're afraid to be yourself. You've been so pushing yourself down and not feeling the heart of what you'd love to be doing, what makes your heart most happy. And of course you deserve that. And again, if you're the first person that not only the nail that stands up before it gets hammered down, but you put flowers on yourself and you just start, waving your way through every lifetime, singing your way through every bridge, instead of worrying if this bridge will fall, if we're worrying about our life expectancy. Instead of all that, just say, can I send love within this moment to anyone who's overwhelmed or stuck right now? We're beaming you love light, 'cause it always feels right whenever we're beaming you and everyone on every earth too. Love light, love light of all to each and all.